The office building was quiet, almost eerily so. Most people had left hours ago, their desks cleared and chairs pushed in neatly under the tables. But for her, the night was just beginning. She worked as a janitor at Sterling Tech, a big company, with shiny glass windows and an even shinier reputation. Her name wasn't important to most of the people who walked past her during the day, but she knew every corner of that place like the back of her hand. Every evening, she would arrive around 9 p.m., armed with her mop, bucket, broom, and cleaning supplies. Her uniform, a simple gray shirt and black pants, was always clean when she started, but usually ended up smudged by the time her shift was over. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills. And right now, paying the bills mattered. More than anything else, her life hadn't been easy. A few years ago, she lost her husband in a car accident. Since then, she'd been raising their 2 kids on her own. They lived in a small apartment not far from the office, and though money was tight, she made sure they never went without food or clothes. Nights like this one were tough because it meant being away from them, but she reminded herself that she was doing it all for them. Every swipe of the mop brought her closer to giving them a better future. Tonight, however, was different. Instead of the usual cubicles and hallways, she'd been assigned to clean the boardroom. This wasn't something she did often. It was reserved for special occasions or high-profile meetings. The boardroom was huge, with a long polished table that could seat 20 people comfortably. The walls were lined with expensive-looking art, and the floor gleamed under the soft glow of recessed lighting. It was the kind of room where big decisions were made, deals worth millions were signed, and dreams were either crushed or realized. As she pushed open the heavy wooden door, she felt a little out of place. This wasn't her world. It belonged to suits and ties, to men and women whose names appeared in newspapers and magazines. Still, she reminded herself that no matter how fancy the room looked, dirt was dirt. And dirt was her job. She set down her supplies and got to work. First, she wiped the table, making sure there wasn't a single fingerprint left behind. Then, she moved on to the chairs, dusting each one carefully. Finally, she turned her attention to the floor. That's when she noticed the faint streaks crisscrossing the glossy surface. Someone must have spilled something earlier, and whoever cleaned up afterward hadn't done a thorough job. Sighing, she grabbed the mop and bucket. Mopping wasn't hard, but it was tiring, especially after a long day. As she dipped the mop into the soapy water and began scrubbing, she wished she had someone to help her. But everyone else had already clocked out, leaving her alone in the vast, empty office. Just as she was starting to feel the weight of exhaustion settle in, she heard footsteps behind her. Startled, she turned around quickly, nearly knocking over the bucket. Standing in the doorway was a man. He looked tall, even from a distance, with salt and pepper hair and a friendly smile. He wore jeans and a sweater nothing like the tailored suits she usually saw in the boardroom. "Hey," he said, his voice calm and warm. "Need a hand?" For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Who was this guy? What was he doing here so late? Was he even allowed to be in the building? But before her mind could spiral into questions, she nodded. "Sure," she replied, trying to sound casual. "If you don't mind." He stepped inside and picked up the other mop leaning against the wall. Without another word, he joined her, working silently beside her. Together, they tackled the stubborn stains on the floor, moving rhythmically across the room. At first, she kept glancing at him, wondering if he was some sort of security guard or maybe a tech guy fixing things late at night. But he didn't act like either of those. There was something about him, an air of confidence. Maybe that didn't quite fit. After a while, he broke the silence. "You've been working here long?" he asked, his tone light and conversational. "About 3 years," she answered, keeping her eyes on the floor. "It's steady work." "Steady is good," he said, nodding. "I've done my share of odd jobs, too. Not everything has to be glamorous to be meaningful." His words caught her off guard. Most people didn't talk to her like that, like her work mattered. Usually they barely noticed her unless they needed something cleaned or fixed, but this man seemed genuinely interested. Maybe it was the late hour, or maybe it was just who he was, but she found herself relaxing a little. They worked together. For another 20 minutes, chatting casually about nothing in particular. He told her about his early days, how he used to take whatever jobs he could find to make ends meet. She listened intently, surprised by how relatable his story felt. By the time they finished mopping, the floor sparkled like new. "You didn't have to do this," she said, looking at him gratefully. "But I really appreciate it," he smiled, shrugging modestly. "Everyone deserves a little help now and then." Before leaving, he mentioned that he'd recently joined Sterling Tech. Excited to see where things go, he added, his eyes twinkling with excitement. She nodded politely, assuming he was probably some mid-level manager or consultant. After all, why would anyone higher up spend their evening mopping floors? Little did she know, this chance encounter was about to change everything for both of them. The two of them stood in the boardroom for a moment, the silence between them comfortable now. The man James, as he had introduced himself, looked around the room with a small smile, like he was taking it all in for the first time, she noticed. How his hands were calloused, not the smooth, manicured fingers she expected from someone who worked in an office like this. It made her wonder again about him. Something about the way he carried himself felt different, but she couldn't quite put her finger on it. "You know," James said, breaking the quiet, "this place has potential." "I mean, sure, it's nice enough, but there's always room to make it better." She tilted her head slightly, curious. "Better? Like what?" He chuckled softly, leaning against the mop handle. "Well, for starters, maybe people could treat it less like a fortress and more like home, a place where everyone feels like they belong, you know?" His words surprised her. Most people didn't talk like that, at least not the ones she usually crossed paths with at work. They were too busy rushing to meetings or glued to their phones. But James seemed thoughtful, almost reflective. He wasn't just filling the air with empty chatter. He actually meant what he said. "I guess I never thought about it that way," she admitted, wringing out the mop into the bucket. "Most days. I'm just trying to get through my shift." He nodded, understanding. "I get that. Life doesn't give everyone the luxury of stopping to think about big picture stuff. Trust me, I've been there." His voice softened, and for a second he looked like he was somewhere else entirely. Then he shook his head slightly, bringing himself back to the present. "Anyway, enough philosophy for one night. Let's finish up here." They worked side by side for a little while longer, cleaning up the last bits of dirt and making sure everything was spotless. As they packed away the supplies, James glanced at her. "So, do you enjoy working here?" he asked casually. She hesitated, unsure how to answer. Did she enjoy it? Not really. But it paid the bills, and she liked the stability it gave her family. Still, she didn't want to sound ungrateful, so she shrugged. "It's okay. It's not perfect, but it's steady, and that matters when you've got kids depending on you." James nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Kids, huh? How many?" "Two," she replied, smiling faintly despite herself. Talking about her children always brought a warmth to her chest, even if it also reminded her of how hard things had been since losing her husband, a boy and a girl. "They keep me busy." "That's great," James said sincerely. "Being a parent is no joke. Takes a lot of strength." She laughed lightly, shaking her head. "Strength is one word for it. Some days it feels more like survival." He grinned, and for a moment the two of them shared a look that felt oddly familiar, like they understood each other without needing to say anything more. It was strange, really. She barely knew this man, yet there was something comforting about his presence. Maybe it was the way he listened, not just hearing her words, but actually paying attention, or maybe it was just the fact that he hadn't treated her like she was invisible, the way so many others did. As they finished packing up, James glanced at his watch. "Well, I should probably let you get back to your routine. Thanks for letting me tag along. It was fun, believe it or not." She smiled, genuinely touched. "Thanks for helping." "Most people wouldn't have bothered," he waved off her gratitude. "Like I said earlier, everyone deserves a little help now and then." With that, he turned to leave, pausing only briefly at the door. "Oh, and hey, if anyone gives you trouble about tonight, just tell them James sent you." That ought to clear things up. She raised an eyebrow, amused. James. Sent me? What kind of authority does that carry? He laughed, the sound warm and easy. You'd be surprised. And with that, he disappeared down the hallway, leaving her standing there with her mop and bucket. For a few moments she stared after him, replaying their conversation in her mind. There was something about him, something she couldn't quite explain, that lingered long after he was gone. The next day, the office buzzed with energy. People hurried past her, clutching coffee cups and chatting animatedly about some big announcement that had come down from the top brass. Normally, she tuned out the gossip. It rarely affected her, but today something caught her ear. Did you hear? We've got a new CEO, one of the receptionists said excitedly to her coworker. Apparently, he started yesterday. Her coworker nodded, clearly intrigued. Yeah, I heard he's supposed to be some kind of tech genius. Made billions before. Turning 40. Crazy, right? The receptionist leaned in closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. And get this, he's supposed to be super hands-on. Rumor has it he walked around the office last night, introducing himself to people. At that, she froze, her mop hovering midair. Last night? Walking around the office? Her mind raced back to the man in the boardroom, the one who had helped. Her clean, who had talked to her like she mattered. Could it really be him? No, she told herself firmly. That guy was probably just another employee, maybe someone new who wanted to make a good impression. There was no way he was the CEO. CEOs didn't mop floors. They didn't chat casually with janitors. They certainly didn't show up wearing jeans and sweaters. Still, the thought nagged at her. Later that evening during her break, she decided to ask her supervisor about the rumors swirling around the office. Her supervisor, a middle-aged woman named Linda, was sorting through paperwork when she approached. Hey, Linda, she began hesitantly. Do you know anything about the new CEO? Everyone's talking about him. Linda looked up, her face lighting up with excitement. Oh yeah, his name's James Carter, big shot in the tech world. Supposed to be brilliant and humble, apparently. Why do you ask? She hesitated, unsure how much to say. Just curious, I heard he might have been here last night. Linda's eyes widened. Oh, absolutely. He stayed late, walking around, meeting people. Word is he wants to get to know the company from the ground up. Pretty impressive, huh? Impressive didn't begin to cover it. Suddenly, pieces of the puzzle clicked into place. The confident demeanor, the calloused hands, the way he'd spoken about making the workplace feel like home. And then there was the casual comment about sending her regards if anyone questioned. Her story, her heart skipped a beat. Could it really be true? Was the man who had helped her mop the floor none other than James Carter, the billionaire CEO? For the rest of her shift, she couldn't stop thinking about it. If it was him, what did that mean? Would he remember their conversation? Would he think less of her for being surprised? Or worse, would he forget about her completely once he settled into his role? But deep down, she suspected he wouldn't. There was something genuine about him. Something that told her he wasn't the type to forget a face or a shared moment over a mop bucket, whatever happened next. One thing was certain. Her quiet night shift had taken an unexpected turn. And somehow she had a feeling this was only the beginning. The next few days passed in a blur. She couldn't shake the thought of James Carter, the man who had helped her mop the floor, the man who was now the CEO of Sterling Tech. Every time she walked through the office, she half expected to see him again, but he was nowhere to be found. Maybe he was busy settling into his new role, meeting with executives, or diving into the endless pile of responsibilities that came with running a company like this. Or maybe, just maybe, he had forgotten all about their late-night encounter, but even if he had, she hadn't. The memory of their conversation kept replaying in her mind. His words about making the workplace feel like home, about everyone deserving help, stuck with her. They weren't the kind of things you'd expect to hear from someone at the top. Most CEOs she'd seen over the years were distant, almost untouchable. They moved through the office like ghosts, their presence felt only in memos and meetings. But James, he was different. He had rolled up his sleeves and worked alongside her, treating her like an equal rather than someone beneath. Still, she tried not to dwell on it too much. Life didn't give her the luxury of daydreaming. Her kids needed her attention, her rent wasn't going to pay itself, and there were always floors to clean and trash bins to empty. So she threw herself into her work, focusing on the rhythm of her routine: sweep, mop, dust, repeat. It was simple, predictable, and safe. Then, one evening, as she was finishing up in the break room, one of the administrative assistants approached her. The woman looked nervous, fidgeting with the clipboard in her hands. "Hey," she said hesitantly. "Do you have a moment?" "There's, something I need to tell you." She paused, setting down her cleaning supplies. "Sure, what's up?" The assistant glanced around as if making sure no one else was listening. "You know how everyone's been talking about Mr. Carter, the new CEO?" She nodded, unsure where this was going. "Well, apparently he's been asking about you." Her stomach dropped. "About me?" She echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would he ask about me?" The assistant shrugged, looking just as confused. "I don't know. All I heard was that he mentioned your name during a meeting earlier today. Something about wanting to meet with you personally." She felt a wave of panic rising in her chest. Why would the CEO want to meet with her? Had she done something wrong? Was this some kind of mistake? Her mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. "Are you sure?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Maybe he meant someone else." The assistant shook her head. "Nope, he specifically asked for you. Said he met you last week." "Last week, of course." The boardroom, the mop, the casual conversation about life and work and family, it all came rushing back to her. If she had doubted before whether the man who helped her clean was really James Carter, there was no denying it now. "Okay," she said finally, forcing herself to take a deep breath. "Thanks for letting me know." The assistant gave her a sympathetic smile before hurrying off, leaving her alone with her thoughts. For a moment she just stood there, staring at the wall. What did he want? Was this some sort of test? A prank? Or was he serious about wanting to talk to her? Whatever it was, she knew she couldn't ignore it. If the CEO of the company wanted to meet with her, she didn't have much of a choice. So the next evening, after her shift ended, she made her way to the executive suite, her heart pounding with every step. The elevator ride felt impossibly long. Each ding of the passing floors seemed louder than the last, echoing in her ears like a countdown to something she wasn't prepared for. When the doors finally opened, she stepped out into a world that felt completely foreign. The executive floor was sleek and modern, with plush carpets and glass walls that reflected the city. Lights outside. Everything about it screamed wealth and power, two things she had spent most of her life trying to avoid thinking about. A secretary greeted her at the reception desk, her smile warm but professional. "Hi. You must be here to see Mr. Carter. He's expecting you." She nodded, clutching her hands together to stop them from trembling. "Yes, that's me." "Great. Just go straight down the hall. His office is the last door on the right." With a shaky breath, she followed the directions, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. As she approached the heavy wooden door, at the end of the hallway, she hesitated for a moment, gathering her courage. Then, summoning every ounce of strength she had, she knocked lightly. "Come in," called a familiar voice from inside. She pushed the door open and stepped into the room. Behind a large mahogany desk sat James Carter, dressed in a crisp suit this time, but still wearing that same warm smile she remembered from their first meeting. He looked up as she entered, his eyes lighting up with recognition. "There you are," he said, standing up and coming around the desk to greet her. "I'm glad you could make it." For a moment she just stood there, unsure what to say. Seeing him in this setting in his element was surreal. This wasn't the man in jeans and a sweater who had helped her mop the floor. This was James Carter, billionaire CEO, leader of one of the biggest tech companies in the country. And yet, despite the change in scenery, he seemed exactly the same. I didn't think you'd remember me," she admitted, her voice shaking slightly. He laughed softly, waving off her comment. Of course I remembered you. How could I forget? You taught me a thing or two about hard work that night. She blinked, surprised. I taught you? He nodded, his expression thoughtful. Yeah, you reminded me that success isn't just about numbers or strategies, it's about people. About how we treat each other, especially those who might not always get noticed. His words caught her off guard. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, like her work mattered, like she mattered. She felt a lump forming in her throat, and quickly looked down, pretending to adjust the strap of her bag. Well, she said quietly, I'm just doing my job. And you're doing it well, he replied firmly. But I also know it's not easy. Raising kids on your own, working nights, dealing with everything life throws at you, that takes real strength. She swallowed hard, fighting back tears. She hadn't expected this, not the kindness, not the acknowledgement, not the genuine interest in her life. It was overwhelming in the best possible way. So, he continued, gesturing for her to sit down, I wanted to thank you. Not just for letting me help that night, but for reminding me why I do what I do. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the money or the title. It's about making a difference for everyone, not just the people at the top. As she sank into the chair across from him, she realized something. James Carter wasn't just a CEO. He was a person, a human being who cared deeply about others, who saw value in every single person he encountered. And somehow, against all odds, he had chosen to see value in her. By the time she left his office, her head was spinning. He had told her about his plans for the company, initiatives to improve workplace culture, programs to support employees, pursuing education, and efforts to create a more inclusive environment. He even hinted that he might have a role for her in implementing some of these changes. Though he didn't go into specifics, walking back to the elevator, she couldn't help but smile. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen. Not as a janitor, not as a struggling single mother, but as a person worthy of respect and opportunity. And while she didn't know exactly what the future held, one thing was certain. Her quiet night shift had sparked something bigger than she ever could have imagined. The days that followed her meeting with James Carter felt like a whirlwind. She couldn't stop thinking about their conversation, the way he had spoken to her, the plans he shared for the company, and most importantly, the way he made her feel. It wasn't just gratitude or respect. It was something deeper than that. For the first time in years, she felt like someone believed in her, not just as a worker doing her job, but as a person with potential. Her shift routines hadn't changed much on the surface. She still cleaned offices, emptied trash bins, and mopped floors, but inside, everything was different. There was a spark of hope now, a tiny flame that refused to go out no matter how tired or overwhelmed she felt. And it all stemmed from that one night in the boardroom, when a man who turned out to be the CEO decided to pick up a mop and help her. It didn't take long for word to spread around the office about James's new initiatives. Employees buzzed with excitement over emails announcing programs aimed at supporting staff members who wanted to pursue further education or training. One initiative stood out above the rest, a scholarship fund designed specifically for employees looking to advance their careers through higher learning. The announcement mentioned that this idea came directly from James himself, inspired by his interactions with people across the company, including someone from the cleaning team. When she read the email, her breath caught in her throat. It didn't explicitly mention her name, but she knew exactly what it meant. This was her story, or at least part of it, that James had used to inspire change. He had listened to her talk about raising her kids alone and working nights to make ends meet, and he had turned those moments into action. Suddenly she realized why he had asked to meet with her. It wasn't just to say thank you. It was because he saw her as more than just a janitor. He saw her as someone capable of achieving great things if given the chance. For weeks, she wrestled with the idea of applying for the scholarship. On one hand, it seemed too good to be true, a golden opportunity handed to her on a silver platter. On the other hand, doubt crept in. Who was she to think she could go back to school? She hadn't set foot in a classroom in years. What if she failed? What if everyone found out and laughed at her for even trying? But then she remembered James's words. Success isn't just about numbers or strategies, it's about people. If he believed in her, maybe it was time she started believing in herself too. One evening, after finishing her shift, she sat down at the kitchen table with her laptop. Her kids were asleep, the house was quiet, and for once, her mind was clear. She opened the application form for the scholarship program and stared at the blank fields. They asked for basic information, name, age, current role, but also required an essay explaining why she wanted to pursue education and how it would impact her life. At first, the cursor blinked mockingly on the screen, daring her to type something meaningful. How could she put her dreams into words? How could she explain that going back to school wasn't just about getting a degree? It was about proving to herself and her children that they deserved better. That hard work and determination could lead to opportunities they never thought possible. She took a deep breath and began typing. Slowly, sentence by sentence, her thoughts poured onto the page. She wrote about losing her husband and the challenges of raising 2 kids alone. She talked about her late-night shifts and the sacrifices she made to keep food on the table and clothes on their backs. And she explained how the scholarship would give her the tools she needed to build a brighter future, not just for herself, but for her family. By the time she finished, tears streamed down her face. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. For the first time in years, she felt proud of herself, not because of what she had accomplished, but because of what she was willing to try. A few weeks later, she received an email notifying her that she had been accepted into the scholarship program. At first, she thought it was a mistake. Surely, there were others more qualified, more deserving. But as she read the message again and again, the truth sank in. She had done it. She had taken a leap of faith, and it had paid off. James called her into his office the day after she got the news. When she walked in, he greeted her with a wide smile. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "I heard you applied for the scholarship. I'm really proud of you." She felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "Thank you. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied gently. "Just promise me one thing. Don't let anyone or anything stand in your way. You've got this." His confidence in her was contagious. By the time she left his office, she felt ready to take on the world. Balancing work, school, and parenting wasn't easy. Some nights she stayed up until dawn studying after putting the kids to bed. Other times she fell asleep at the kitchen table with textbooks open in front of her. There were moments when she doubted herself, when the weight of everything threatened to crush her. But every time she felt like giving up, she remembered James's belief in her and her own determination to create a better life for her family. Over time, she began to notice changes, not just in herself, but in the workplace. 2. The initiatives James introduced started to reshape the culture at Sterling Tech. Employees from all levels of the company were encouraged to share their ideas and feedback. Managers held regular check-ins to ensure everyone felt supported. Even small gestures, like handwritten notes of appreciation from supervisors, became common. And then there was her. People noticed her ambition, her willingness to push beyond her comfort zone. Co-workers who had barely acknowledged her before now stopped to chat, asking about her classes and offering encouragement. It was strange, almost surreal, to realize that she was becoming someone others looked up to. As the months passed, she threw herself into her studies with relentless focus. She enrolled in online courses, juggling assignments alongside her nightly cleaning duties. Her kids cheered her on, drawing pictures of her wearing a graduation cap and hanging them on the fridge. Their pride fueled her motivation, reminding her why she was doing this in the first place. Meanwhile, James continued to check in on her progress. Sometimes he'd stop by during her shift to see how she was holding up. Other times he'd send encouraging messages through the company portal. His support never wavered, and it gave her the strength to keep going even when things got tough. By the end of her first year, she had earned enough credits to transfer into a business administration program. It was a huge milestone, one she celebrated quietly with her kids over pizza and ice cream. As they laughed and joked together, she realized something important. She wasn't just building a better future for them. She was showing them that no dream was too big, no obstacle too insurmountable, as long as you were willing to fight for it. Looking back, she knew none of this would have happened without that fateful night in the boardroom. A chance encounter with a man who chose to help instead of judge had set her on a path she never imagined possible. James Carter hadn't just changed her life, he had reminded her that kindness, humility, and belief in others could transform the world, one person at a time. And though their paths rarely crossed anymore, she carried his lessons with her every day. Because sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness, one moment of connection, to remind us that we are capable of far more than we ever dreamed. The years rolled by faster than she ever could have imagined. What started as a late-night conversation over a mop bucket had turned into a journey that transformed not just her life, but the lives of those around her. She often thought back to that evening in the boardroom, the quiet hum of the office, the streaks on the floor, and the man who didn't act like he was above helping someone clean up. It felt surreal now, knowing how much that moment had shaped everything that followed. Her classes weren't easy. There were days when she wondered if she'd made the right decision, nights when exhaustion threatened to pull her under. But every time doubt crept in, she remembered the look in James's eyes when he told her, "You've got this." Those three simple words carried her through some of her darkest moments. They reminded her that she wasn't alone, that there was someone out there who believed in her even when she struggled to believe in herself. Her kids noticed the change in her too. They saw their mom juggling work, school, and parenting with a resilience they hadn't fully understood before. At first, they complained about the late dinners and missed movie nights. But as time went on, they began to realize what she was doing. One evening, her son walked up to her while she was studying at the kitchen table. He placed a cup of tea beside her laptop and said, "Mom, I'm proud of you." She looked up, tears welling in her eyes. "You are?" He nodded earnestly. Yeah. You're working so hard for us. And you're showing me that I can do anything if I try." That moment stayed with her forever. It wasn't just about earning a degree or landing a better job. It was about being an example for her children. About proving to them that no matter where you start, you can always move forward if you're willing to put in the effort. By the time she graduated, she had earned more than just a diploma. She had gained confidence, a quiet strength that came from knowing she had faced challenges head-on and come out stronger on the other side. The ceremony itself was bittersweet. Her kids sat in the front row, beaming with pride as she walked across the stage to accept her certificate. James was there too, sitting a few rows back, clapping enthusiastically. When their eyes met, she gave him a small nod of gratitude. Without his belief in her, none of this would have been possible. Afterward, at the reception, people from Sterling Tech approached her to congratulate her. Many of them had heard bits and pieces of her story, how she balanced work and school, how she inspired others with her determination. Some even admitted they had underestimated her before, assuming she was content staying in her role as a janitor. Now, they saw her in a new light, as someone who refused to let circumstances define her. James pulled her aside during the celebration. "So," he said with a grin, "what's next for you?" She smiled, feeling a surge of excitement. "I don't know yet. Maybe management? Or something in HR. I'd love to help create opportunities for others like me." He nodded approvingly. "Whatever you choose, I know you'll excel at it." His faith in her meant the world. It wasn't just about career advancement. It was about realizing her worth. For so long, she had seen herself as someone who cleaned floors and emptied trash bins. Now, she knew she was capable of so much more. A few months later, she accepted a promotion to facilities coordinator, overseeing the team she once belonged to. It was a dream come true, not because of the title or the slightly higher paycheck, but because it allowed her to make a difference. She implemented changes based on her own experiences, ensuring that everyone on her team felt valued and supported. She introduced flexible schedules for parents, organized workshops to help employees develop new skills, and created a feedback system so people could voice their concerns without fear of judgment. Word of her success spread beyond Sterling Tech. Local newspapers wrote articles about her journey, highlighting how she overcame adversity and inspired others along the way. She became a symbol of hope for people who felt stuck in dead-end jobs, proof that hard work and perseverance could lead to incredible opportunities. But despite all the attention, she remained humble. She never forgot where she came from or the struggles she faced. Whenever she spoke publicly, she made sure to acknowledge the people who helped her along the way, her kids, her coworkers, and especially James Carter. Years later, she stood on stage at her alma mater's graduation ceremony, delivering the keynote speech. As she gazed out at the sea of caps and gowns, she felt a lump form in her throat. These were students about to step into the real world, full of dreams and fears and uncertainties. She wanted to give them something meaningful, something they could carry with them as they navigated life's twists and turns. "When I was your age," she began, her voice steady despite the emotion bubbling beneath the surface, "I never imagined I'd be standing here today. Back then, my biggest goal was getting through each day without falling apart. Life had thrown me curveballs I didn't think I could handle. But looking back, I realized those challenges taught me something important. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness can lead to the biggest opportunities." She paused, letting the words sink in. "There was a night years ago when I was cleaning a boardroom alone. A man walked in and offered to help me mop the floor. At the time, I didn't know he was the CEO of the company. All I knew was that. He treated me like I mattered. That one act of kindness changed my life. It reminded me that we're all connected, that our actions, no matter how small, can have a ripple effect." She took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping across the audience. "So, as you leave here today, remember this: be kind, be humble, and never underestimate the power of believing in yourself and in others, because you never know who might be watching, waiting for someone to show them that they're capable of greatness." The crowd erupted into applause, but she barely heard it. Her mind was elsewhere, back in that bored one room, reliving the moment that started it all. She thought about James and how his willingness to roll up his sleeves and help a stranger had sparked a chain reaction neither of them could have predicted. As she stepped off the stage, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. Her journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth it. She had proven to herself and to her children that no obstacle was insurmountable, and she had shown the world that kindness, combined with determination, could truly change lives. In the end, it wasn't just about her. It was about the ripple effect, one person lifting another, creating waves of positivity that reached farther than anyone could imagine. That night in the boardroom had been the beginning of something beautiful. And though she may never fully understand why fate brought her and James together, she knew one thing for certain: sometimes the most unexpected encounters can lead to the most extraordinary outcomes.